I'm Ken Jacobson, one of the programmers for DocLands, and I want to welcome you to DocLands and to this Q&A for Piano To Zanskar, directed by Michal Sulima. First, I want to thank our supporters of the festival, our sponsors, our California Film Institute members, and of course, you, our audience. Now on to the film. Piano To Zanskar had its world premiere at the 2018 Edinburgh Film Festival, was grand prize winner at the 2019 Banff Mountain Film and Book Festival, and is screened at numerous festivals around the world. We're thrilled today to have with us director Michal Sulima and producer Jarek Kotomski.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Michal is a commercial and documentary film director and cinematographer based in London, and Jarek is a producer and photographer also based in London, and his first photography book is called Children of Zanskar. Welcome, Michal and Jarek. Congratulations on the film, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Ken. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
It's a lovely film, and I want to just jump in and see if you can take us back to how you first met the amazing Desmond, and how you kind of found out about the plans he was hatching for this epic journey.
Over to you, Jarek.
Sure. I mean, that's something I would call a serendipitous meeting. I was actually looking for a piano at the time, and I had a very specific piano in mind. Somehow I was fixated on a piano with candle holders, an antique piano with candelabras, and I found one online, and the description said that the piano was fully restored and tuned. I called the person who was selling it, and it happened to be Desmond. And this elderly gentleman answered the phone, and he said, "Yes, I'll have the piano come to my workshop tomorrow, and you can see it." So the next day, I went to his workshop in the evening after work, and the moment I entered it, I was quite intrigued because it was a very special place. It was plastered with musical notations, lots of pianos in various states of disrepair, car bumpers hanging from the ceiling. And then Desmond came out, this eccentric-looking British man. And when I told him I came to see the piano with candelabras, he sort of looked at me strangely, scratched his head and said he sold it to. So in a weird way, I was immediately drawn to him because I knew that this is a very unusual character. And we ended up spending 3 hours that evening in his workshop just talking. And eventually, when he found out that I'm a photographer, and at the time I was also working on my first documentary concept with another friend of mine, he told me that he had this idea that he wanted to take a piano to this tiny village in the Himalayas, because one of his former clients told him about this place, and that he would like to make a film about it if I'm up for it. So at the time, it all sounded so surreal to me and so exciting that immediately after that meeting, I went to Michal, I pitched the project to him, and this is how it started.
What year was that?
That was 2014. Seems like a lifetime ago now.
And what did it take to go from that initial 3-hour meeting, and then you're telling Michal about the idea, to actually, joining on this epic journey with a camera, and just this whole crazy thing taking shape?
I think it was a very quick decision. I mean, one of the reasons why it was very quick was because we didn't have a lot of experience. Actually, we had none as filmmakers. When Jarek approached me, I just freshly graduated from photography at a University of the Arts here in London. And so by the time I graduated, I kind of already knew that I'm probably more interested in narrative formats that filmmaking runs than the specific narrative format type that photography is known for. And so when I departed from the university, I already had an idea that I'm looking almost kind of subconsciously for a material for a film. And so, months later, Jarek approached me when he first told me, when he arrived, and, he kind of gave me the skinny I thought he was joking. I thought he was pulling my leg. But then his face indicated that he's not actually joking. It's a very serious opportunity. And so I think we both kind of realized, you know, for better or for worse, we want to do it because it sounds like a fantastic opportunity. It sounds like the kind of thing we both wanted to do in our own several ways that kind of conjoined. And so because we didn't know any better, we decided to do it, you know, without any sort of consideration for health and safety or planning or any such nonsense. So we jumped into it, I think, yeah.
Well, what sort of made it more real for us is that a colleague of mine, she was working for one of the leading English newspapers at the time, for video department. And when I told her about the story, she said, this is perfect for their video department. She pitched it to her boss. Her boss loved it. And for about a month, we were developing this, this project with the Telegraph. However, eventually, what they proposed to us was just unacceptable to us. They wanted to make a 15-minute sort of slightly commercial film out of that, and we thought, okay, we don't need their money, we don't need their support. Now we know that there's more in this idea than meets the eye, and that it's actually something that can be done, and we decided to do it ourselves. And yeah, I have to say that up until a week before we departed, we actually weren't sure if it's actually going to happen, because the way this whole project was developing was quite surreal, and nothing was ever certain. And that's the beauty of working with Desmond.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. You know, we don't see a whole lot in the movie about the year. You know, he says it took a year of planning, but we don't see a whole lot of that planning process. And I just wondered, you know, how obviously it did require a good amount of planning. Tell us a bit more about everything that led up to the trip.
Well, just to address the 1 year of planning, I think this is, you have to take a bit of a pinch of salt sometimes when you listen to Desmond as a narrator. Desmond has this charming way about him of being a slightly unreliable narrator. He tend to exaggerate some things as he was saying them. And, you know, to us, it was part of a lovable charm of the man himself. But I think it's also not necessarily inaccurate in that it was rattling around his head for at least a year by the time Jarek met him in a workshop. And a testament to that from my perspective was once it was settled that we are actually doing this, and we still didn't know how it's going to pan out, or, you know, whether we're going to have money to go. We just set out and said, well, we're doing this, we're starting to film, and that itself puts it in motion. And so once we started filming at Camden Town in London, we've seen quite a few people sort of coming in and out, which were Desmond's friends and associates and people who knew him, you know, some delivery people who would drop parcels, and he was very friendly with everybody. And so immediately I realized that quite a few of those people, they were familiar with Desmond's desire to go to the Himalayas. And it's been roughly about a year. And so one of them looked at me very solemnly, almost sadly, and said, "So you are going after all?" And I said, "Yes, we are." And he just shook his head. He said, "You know, I was going to be part of this. Desmond said he can take me if I want, but I never thought it's going to happen." So I said, "Good luck." And I said, "No." So by this, I know that it's been going on for a little while before Jarek and myself arrived at the picture. Yeah.
You know, there is that point in the film pretty early on when you're up on the trail and the piano is kind of sliding all over the place. And then Desmond says, I think to Anna, you know, this is complete madness. I'm wondering to what extent did you share that sentiment? And I guess I would apply that to what he was attempting to do, and then also what you were attempting to do in making a film about what he was attempting to do.
Well, we were gloriously unaware of the logistical dangers and the level of complication that this whole enterprise carried with it. And I think this is probably the only reason why we have undertaken it, because we haven't gone there before. We didn't know how difficult the terrain is. We had no idea how small or big the animals would be, which were supposed to carry the piano. And because of that, this whole undertaking, I think, had the chance to actually happen. Otherwise, we would decide that it's too crazy. And so once we were there, once we on the slope of that mountain, once we actually realized what we're facing, yes, I think we all realized that this is a little bit crazy. We never knew up until the very last point whether we were actually going to be able to carry out this mission to the end successfully without anyone getting ill or without the piano being damaged or lost. So it was a lot of it was just based on faith and hope.
Yeah, and at that point, I think we all kind of realized it's all in. There's no returning now. The yaks might be a little bit too small. The slopes might be a little bit too steep, but it's probably closer to Lingshed now than it is the other way around. So you just have to carry on.
You know, I guess I'd ask you to pull back the curtain just a bit, and you know, to what extent were you just hands off, observing, documenting what they were doing? To what extent were you maybe pulled into lending a hand to what they were doing? Because obviously it seems like they were a bit short-handed at various points.
Yeah.
I had to lend my hand to carrying a piano, and also every day we had sort of conversations and discussions about how we're going to proceed. But because, as you said, we didn't really have enough people or enough crew, we had to put our hand to the task as well. So I had the pleasure of carrying the piano frame at the elevation of 4,000 meters above sea, which I didn't want anyone to do. It was extremely difficult. Michal didn't have an easier task because he had a very heavy camera rig and he had to run around and make sure that he captures everything. So there was definitely a little bit of a mix-up, and we had to help a little bit with just the general undertaking, not just focus on making a film.
Yeah, I would add to this only that from a point of view of aesthetically putting the film together, it presented a little bit of a challenge in my mind at the time, because even though obviously we were never hands off, you know, you guys do whatever you want and we're just going to film you, whether you fail or not. It was a very small, very tight crew, so it was quite intimate. So we were all sort of on the same boat. But it did present a little bit of a challenge for me, in a sense that I did not want, and that was the idea from the beginning, I did not want us to be part of the visible narrative of a film, because it's a very valid way of making films. Of course, Werner Herzog's very much like that, but we didn't want to be part of the picture. We didn't want us to be in front of a camera. And so by this, we were sort of, I thought, shortening the distance between the audience and Desmond and the crew. So conceptually, it was getting in a way a little bit, but never to the point where it would prevent us from helping.
To what extent did you talked about Desmond as a bit of an unreliable narrator, but and I'm wondering, you know, to what extent had he been in communication with folks in Lingshed and really kind of worked out, like, here's what I want to do. Are you interested in what I'm, you know, what I want to bring to you? And just what was the level of communication between him and the people of the community?
We had a fantastic fixer, Mr. Ramesh Kumar Batal from High Places, part Indian, part British Himalayan trekking company. And he got in touch with the headmaster quite early on and explained that we had this idea because originally the idea came from a school teacher who was a friend of Desmond, who wanted to move there and actually teach piano, but then she couldn't go because she got pregnant. However, the school was notified about it and they were very excited about the piano. I think they were also probably quite amused because they knew the terrain, they knew how difficult it is to get there. And they told us that it was quite funny that some white people from London are bringing this extremely heavy singing box, but they loved the idea. They absolutely loved the idea. So when we got there, of course, we were expected and everyone was very, very excited about the piano.
Would the project, meaning Desmond's project, would the piano have gotten there without you guys making the film? It sounds like the two really happened together, and it was a symbiosis that, one couldn't have survived without the other.
Yeah,
Probably.
it's a very good question. It's a question that has been asked before, rightly so. And it made me think, actually. Personally, I am of an opinion that without the film, it's quite possible the piano would never get there. But the reason for it is possibly different to what you might think. I think Desmond, we know that Desmond has tried to communicate this idea to quite a few people before Jarek walked into his workshop. And so, but he never got the response. So nobody ever reflected it back at Desmond the way Jarek did, by saying, you know what, it does sound outrageous, it does sound a little bit crazy, but it also sounds very, very lovely, and I think you should do it. And so I think he needed somebody who would reflect it back at him and confirm that this is a good idea and that it is doable. And so in that regard, yes, I feel if Jarek didn't walk in, it possibly wouldn't have happened.
Desmond was known for doing some charity work before that as well, and he helped to fund a hospital in India. I don't remember exactly where, unfortunately, before we went to the Himalayas to shoot the film. But at the same time, he had many ideas in his head. One of them was building a goldfish piano, a piano with a fish tank, for example. And thank God he never got around to creating this one. And that's why what Michal referred to earlier on was something that we noticed when we started getting to know Desmond a little better. People who would come and visit him in Camden Town in his workshop, they've heard so many tall tales from Desmond and so many different ideas that he had, which he shared with them generously, that they just assumed that this going to the Himalayas and taking a piano, that was probably just one of them. So as Michal said, perhaps he needed just a bunch of inexperienced, young and enthusiastic people like us to actually help him realize this particular idea.
Yeah, even more so considering the fact that Desmond, as far as we know, never properly traveled. So, he's not the sort of man who's well traveled around the world. He mostly, if not entirely, spent his life in England. And so suddenly at 65, with a case of bad lungs, he decides to depart to India, let alone to the Himalayas, 4 or 5 kilometers above the ground with the piano. So it was a big thing for him, and I think he needed somebody who will give him like a little level of security, somebody slightly younger and more, perhaps better traveled than himself. Yeah.
One of the themes of the film, I think, is about how people who are not blood related can bond over a project and become a family, if you will, or a community. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how this extended family functioned during the shoot. Were there ever any tensions, perhaps, that we didn't see in the film?
Sure. I mean, of course, if you spend 3 weeks so closely together and you hit some trouble sometimes, sometimes the weather is awful and, it's cold in the morning or, whatever other difficulties you're facing, there's inevitably going to be somebody at one point or another feeling slightly grumpier on a particular day. But no, nothing really significant to the point where we decided we don't want to include it in the film. There was a couple of moments like this, but again, they were so small, and we thought in the end, once you sit down and you start putting a film together, you it's akin to having like a palette of colors and starting to paint your painting, really. So at this point, you realize what you have, which shades you have, and which shades are going to work together to best convey what the essence of that journey is. And I think for us, we realized there was the amount of those conflicts was so insignificant and so far in between that to try and put them in not only would sort of detract from what the film was about, it would also kind of unbalance it. It would almost feel like we were trying to create drama where there was no drama. So all in all, the sum and balances of the film came out in such a way that we thought No, this is a lovely story as it is. It sends almost a naively beautiful message, and to try and kind of squeeze in one or two moments when somebody not even argues, but discusses something that may have a disagreement.
Has a bad day.
Yeah, no, it was pointless, we thought. Yeah. I would say for 98.5% of the time throughout this journey, we've been all more or less on the same page.
Yes, so nothing on the scale of Werner Herzog and Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Far away.
You have two really great supporting characters here, Anna and Harald, and Harold's hat.
Three
At what point did they come along and you're just kind of like, this is crazy, I can't believe, our good fortune to have these two incredible folks joining us?
Yeah, well, that was the story of Anna, actually, because Desmond hadn't even met Anna at the point when I walked into his workshop. And actually a different friend of his was supposed to come with us, but she eventually bailed out because she just didn't think that this was going to happen at all. And then I think maybe 3 months before our scheduled departure, Anna just walked into Desmond's workshop. She was just strolling around Camden Town, and she was intrigued by the piano workshop, and she walked in there. And then she ended up becoming Desmond's apprentice. And when Desmond told her about this project that we're working on and this expedition that we are preparing, she said, "Oh, I went to Ladakh 5 years earlier. I've already been there." So it was really another of those happy coincidences or serendipitous events which contributed to the film, because Anna became one of the pillars of the film in a way. She brought a lot of beautiful energy, not only with her singing, and she's a real presence. So that was a very happy coincidence.
And the entire film was fertile in such events, both on and off camera. So to add to this, really, Harald, on the other hand, Harald used to be Desmond's apprentice prior to us arriving in the picture and Anna arriving into the picture. And Harald had to go away, I believe, back to Sweden to either continue his studies, or he was back at the time still studying opera singing. But somehow, just in time, he kind of arrived back at that picture. And I think suggested to Desmond that it would be very good to have Harald with us, because, well, for one thing, it creates a certain triangle of characters. So there's a bit of a symmetry to it, if you will. For another, he's a big, strong boy, and he can, certainly carry the piano. He's in very fit condition. And lastly, because from those little encounters with Harald proper, before we started the trip proper, I have a feeling that there might be a certain story to him as well. And so, as Jarek mentioned, Anna brought a lot into that story, into the film. As an environmental scientist, she brought a whole other layer that we were very, very keen on having in the film. Because she kind of represents something. She represents a young idealistic Westerner who comes into a place like Himalayas and Lingshed, a faraway village, and perhaps with very idealized opinions of it. It should be kept as it is, or don't bring the road in there, and so on and so forth. But through the interaction with the locals, she starts to realize, and we do with her, that maybe it's a little bit more grey and less black and white than we think. And Harald, on the other hand, was to me representing, again, a Westerner who has so many choices in his life, as we all do. We're very privileged that he's too many. He doesn't know what to do with himself. And so for him, this was a journey of a reboot, of rediscovering where he's going.
Finding himself.
Yeah, finding himself, very much so.
Yeah, it was very poignant.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you arrived in Lingshed yourselves for the first time, can you talk a bit about what you discovered, and maybe also connect that to you talked before about palette, about the visual palette of the film, because it's beautifully shot, and the cinematography reveals things and brings things to the film that I think support the story and extend the story. So if you could talk a bit about just your own experiences in the town, meeting the locals, people, and then also just the shooting of the film, the cinematography.
Okay, so maybe we can break it down a little bit. Why don't you start, Jarek, and I can jump with cinematography.
Well, I think it was a beautiful experience for all of us, Ken, because Lingshed is such a unique place. It's cut off from the world for 6 to 8 months a year. You could only reach it via the so-called Chadar trek along a frozen river, which sometimes is impassable. And because of that, that place really has been preserved for a very long time with a high degree of sort of purity. And when we arrived there, met all those incredible children who had so much curiosity, enthusiasm, and just beautiful energy about them, and whose life was so simple. And at the same time also so hard, because people there must endure a lot of hardship, and they only live from subsistence farming. I think it really drove the message home to all of us coming from London, that perhaps our lives are a little bit too complicated in London. And this sentiment was universally shared, and it was very, very refreshing to come into contact with these people and just have some sort of an unconditional exchange with them. We benefited a lot from just spending time with them and interacting with them. And they obviously had a brilliant time with the piano and a bunch of crazy white people who just traversed the mountains to bring them this incredible gift. So it made us want to return there, and we did actually. We returned there for 2 more years. Desmond kept returning until his death, and we created a certain bond with those people. And I'm still in touch with some of them. They still send me regular updates, and I still really want to return. So it was quite a transforming experience for all of us.
Yeah, I think putting it in simple terms, it was almost spiritual at some point. Really was lovely to see the other end of the spectrum in terms of how people live their lives. And again, there's a case to be made about, not simplifying things overly and saying, they have it great and we just lost our way here. Definitely is a case for saying that we are losing our way here a little bit, but there must be a balance somewhere in the middle, and that's part of the subject. Would you rather have a road or, a 19th century way of living? One of the things that I've noticed, Jarek said it all very well, so just to add to that, some of the observations I had when we finally reached Lingshed was, there's a shot you can see of all the boys when you first see the kids while we're bringing the piano in after the first night. And something that escaped me originally, and I only noticed it in the editing room, is that one of the boys is holding like a little bunch of money in his hand, actual banknotes. And that combined with the fact that they're all wearing Western clothes, they're not wrapped up in a classic, clothing they will be wearing 1,000 years ago, of course. So that already shows you that it's not such a virgin place entirely. The culture and civilization is changing. The road is already, even if not fully itself physically, it already kind of got there, at least symbolically. So the Western world already is encroaching. The sort of civilization is coming in, and it cannot be stopped. So the piano really isn't the first thing that got there. The piano is the first, I think, symbolic thing that got there. It's more of a symbol than anything else. So that was a big realization, that they're all wearing Western clothes. They have money. The considerations about what happens when the money finally arrives there proper, and also that the scene that I think you mentioned cinematography. So this is less cinematography and perhaps more directing. The scene I was incredibly happy to have captured was that moment when Anna talks to the old lady in a village of Gongma a day before arrival to Lingshed. And that moment when, she realizes actually this lady not only doesn't mind the road, she was praying for it all her life. So it's things like those that really opened, I think, our eyes to a depth of complexities and nuances of existing the way they do.
Can you, obviously Desmond, we see at the end that he did pass away, a couple of years later. What were your last encounters with Desmond? And then if you could give us any updates on Anna or Harald or the piano, that would be nice.
I think our last encounter with Desmond was at the world premiere of the film in Edinburgh, because that was late June, and I think he passed away 3 or 4 months later. He went back to the Himalayas for the last time. He tuned and restored the piano. He organized another concert at the Singala Pass, one of the highest passes there, at 5 kilometers above sea, and then he returned, fell ill, and passed away. So we were very, very happy that Desmond had a chance to see the finished film, but also see it in the context of a world premiere at such a prestigious festival as Edinburgh International Film Festival. The audience was full. The film received a standing ovation. So to us, it was an incredibly gratifying moment and full of symbolism. That was the last time. That was the last time we saw Desmond. As for Anna became an environmental scientist. I think that trip was a really life-changing trip for her. And what she saw there, what she learned from interacting with the local people, and also the extent of damage that she already witnessed in that part of the Himalayas due to plastic and climate change and so on and so forth, really inspired her to move to Dharamsala first, where she started studying environmental science, and then to move back to UK and continue her studies in Wales, where she's presently based, and she's now a scientific researcher, and she's heading a charity called the Gentle Trust in honor of Desmond, and this charity will be operating in Ladakh, and I think they're working on their program now, and they want to work with environmentalists in Ladakh as well. As for Harald tried to become a helicopter pilot. He did turn out to be too tall. Then he started studying quantum physics, because Harald had an innate desire to just contribute something from himself to make the world a better place in a very beautiful and simple way. And I think he's about to graduate soon. And last time we heard from Harald was, I believe, last year. So we haven't been in touch with him recently.
So it's quite possible that under the hat there is a Schrodinger's cat hiding.
Under his cylinder hat. Yes.
So I just want to end on this one quote from Desmond, and he says it in this really beautiful moment that you captured on when he's looking out over the mountain pass and the clouds are coming in, and it's after the piano has had its debut. And he says it took a year in the planning. Well, we've learned a little bit more about that. A month in the execution, and a moment in the realization that maybe we have done something special, something that will last. And I just want to congratulate and thank you both for contributing to something that clearly will last, and certainly has left a deep mark on all of us who've seen the film. So thank you so much for your film.
Thank you very much.
And for being with us today.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Congratulations. Talk to you later. Good luck on your next shoot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.